でもウォークマンは好きだよね。
In a show full of nothing but bold ideas, I feel that if I'm gonna talk about it, I should express a bold idea of my own. Now I like Jojo. I took the moral high ground with Jonathan. I felt intellectually challenged with Joseph, and I had a goddamn dream with Giorno. And when I came out of Battle Tendency, I was ready to see where this wacky adventure was headed next. But when I started with Stardust Crusaders, I just couldn't see why everybody loved it. There was no real plot, most of the villains were pretty bad, and characters lacked something that we in the biz kinda like to call substance. And literally, 85% of the episodes have the same exact plot. Part 3 isn't just bad, it's shit. So I know this isn't exactly a popular opinion, but I do think that part 3 is probably the worst part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But that's not to say that I don't like Stardust Crusaders. I think Stardust Crusaders is very fun, like 80% of the time. And even though it's fun, it has a lot of problems that I'd really like to talk about. Because even though it's fun, it's not very good. So to start off this review, I want to talk about one of my main issues with the show, the plot. And I know what you're thinking. Well, what's wrong with the plot? Well, there really isn't one. Now, the show kind of tricks you into thinking there's a plot when they bring out Dio2 Electric Boogaloo, and he says, "You thought I was dead, but I'm actually Dio." And then it just disappears for the next 44 episodes, leaving us with a very long time until we reach Dio's world. And if it were done well, that wouldn't really be a problem, but the problem starts when each one of these episodes adds nothing to the overall story besides, we're a little closer to Egypt now. I can tell you right now, almost every single one of the episodes in this show plays out exactly like this. Wow, here we are, in this brand new country. I don't know what it is, guys, but this town makes me feel pretty uneasy. You don't think it might be the work of Wait a second. Where's the main character of this episode? It was a stand after all, and there's no foreseeable way to defeat it. I found a way to defeat the stand. And that's literally it for like 30 episodes. Because the show is so formulaic, I found it very hard to keep myself from getting bored as I went on through the series. I literally skipped episode 38 and 39 because I did not want to watch another pointless 2 episodes before getting to something that actually mattered to the story. The show overall just struggles to keep things interesting despite the wide variety of abilities that we get to see. Which brings me to my next point, the terrible villains. Now the show does have some good villains, like Vanilla Ice, Judgment, and of course, Dio. But the majority of villains are just, It's not that they're terrible. I mean, for the most part, they have cool abilities, but after the 15th villain, the novelty wears off and you realize that the novelty of cool abilities is all they even have. For example, I enjoyed Strength because it introduced us to the concept that not only can the stand user not be human, but that the stand itself can be something strange, like a boat. What's strong about Strength is that it builds upon the concept that we already know as a stand. However, I did not think The Sun was a good episode, because while following the same ideas as Strength, it's executed very poorly, and you see that the cool ability novelty is all the episode has at all. We never even get to see the user of the Sun, and I think this results in a very boring episode where our main cast literally just walks through a hot desert. A desert as bland as the personalities of the villains in part 3. Get it? Cause there's nothing in a desert. Another reason the villains in part 3 aren't very good is that they literally don't have personalities. All the villains really do in this part is say, "Dio sent me, and I'll kill you because no one's ever beaten me before." It doesn't really work because none of them have anything of their own to say. They're all just kind of evil because they're evil. And other than a little backstory, most of them are very one-note, relying on a single personality trait to make it through their 1 or 2 episodes. See that dude over there? The dude over here? He likes to beat up children, and that's his defining trait. There's also a couple really bad villains in this show, but I don't really want to talk about them because, like, they're almost villains, but, like, not really villains, so we're just gonna skip past them. And when you juxtapose the villains of part 3 with the villains of the other parts of the show, it becomes incredibly obvious which ones are better. While villains like Kira and the Pillar Men aren't perfect, they are better because they pose a lingering threat over the series, and they have their own quirks, ways of speaking, and motives that make them unique and engaging to watch. Now for just a moment, let's move away from all the bad things of the show and acknowledge what's good about the show. For starters, and I've already talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the video, the beginning episodes of this show are phenomenal. The first few episodes do a fantastic job of showing us all the potential the new concept of stands has to offer. At first, we're shown some very basic stand abilities, but these same basic abilities can be warped and twisted to be stronger abilities. And as the show goes on, we're shown more elaborate and creative abilities that add an element of interest to the story, even though it does get boring after a while. And as I said at the beginning of the video, Stardust Crusaders does a great job convincing you that there's gonna be more of an overarching plot. They basically reintroduce Dio as the already credible threat that we know he is, and say he's back in action, while simultaneously having him be the cause of the stand abilities. Overall, in my personal opinion, I believe the first 5 or 6 episodes are some of the best in the show. And then there's really not so much good stuff for a little while, and then we meet Vanilla Ice! Now let me get one thing straight here. Vanilla Ice is quite possibly the best villain in this show, maybe even a little bit better than Dio. My boy just walks out here and wipes out a main character with no hesitance and then kicks the shit out of 2 other main characters. He is the first real threat to the Joe Bros. And it's not like he's good because his personality is better than any of the other villains in the show, though he does get more screen time and it's more like I love Dio rather than I work for Dio. What makes him good is the raw threat that he poses. His ability is unlike any other we've seen in the show up to that point, and he gives the ability novelty that I love so much a very well needed refresher. It also just occurred to me his name is Cool Ice and not Vanilla Ice. And I find that really disappointing. Because I've been writing Vanilla Ice in my script this whole time. Dio's world is also a very strong part of the series, although I don't really have much to say about it besides the struggle itself to figure out the world's ability is actually very engaging compared to most of the other mystery elements in the show. Alright, back to the bad stuff. The main characters of this show are not written particularly well. Jotaro, for example, is just a cool guy. He's mysterious. He punches stuff and says, "Yada yada, I think I've solved this mystery Scooby-Doo style." Over the course of the series, we never really get to know his character all that well, and I really wish we did, because I find him pretty interesting. Another example is Avdol, who is a huge pile of wasted potential. Now, I love the idea of Avdol, but he never really comes into what he's supposed to be, that being the stand guy, the stand expert. It's not that he's a bad character, but other than his fight with Polnareff, he never really gets the chance to shine. The series literally kills him for 11 episodes only to bring him back and kill him again in a very insulting way. Like, he's there, and then he's dead. 2 seconds later. Part 3 does him so dirty. Now, while none of the characters work particularly well on their own, I will admit that when they're together, their lack of personality is overshadowed by how well they play off of each other. I actually really enjoy watching all the characters interact together. And for my final point, and this is probably one of the ones that bothers me the most, sometimes characters have abilities, and sometimes they don't. Like, their stand abilities just kind of come and go depending on the situation, which is kind of annoying. And sometimes an ability happens, but then never happens again. Most notably, this happens in the fight between Polnareff and Avdol. How come this never happens again? I feel like this would be pretty useful. Would you like to shed your armor at some other point in the show? Would you like to use this? Maybe? Would you like to control your flames this freely at some other point in the show? Maybe? No? Okay, well that's fine. Kakyoin also has his body snatching ability, which is advertised as one of his 2 main abilities, but he only uses it twice in the entire show, which I always found incredibly frustrating because the ability just has so much potential, but it's never used. To reiterate, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3 is the worst part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because the main plot fails to take the forefront of most episodes, most of the villains fail to engage the audience, the episodes are nauseatingly formulaic, And almost the entire main cast is extremely lacking in this thing that we call character. Now, I could continue to go more in depth on why I think this show isn't very good, but now I want to hear from you. Scroll down to that comment section and let me know what you think of Stardust Crusaders. Disagree with me? Let me know. Think I could have done this review better? Please let me know. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this, because this battle is just about over.